So Anthropic recently launched Claude Science, if you haven't heard, and essentially it's aimed at researchers to streamline their whole experimentation process. So we'll talk about the tool, we'll actually jump into it and see, what they have to offer. So I downloaded like a DMG file on my Mac, and now I'm signing in. And you can see here, we can open like an example project. So their first point was about reproducibility, right? You can see what web search was done, even how it planned certain things, even giving confidence intervals, and also like tracing back to the code that, ran a bash script or produced an image like this here. So, it's kind of like a convenient way that researchers can now use. And so if you, think about it, when ChatGPT came out, I remember myself and also a lot of others, we would be like either copying code or just always changing, from ChatGPT to our like coding environment. That was kind of like the version 0. And then version 1 was more like Cursor or Windsurf, where you have the AI in your code editor. Now we have tools like Codex and Cloud Code and so on. And you can have like long running tasks in the background that these agents can handle. And so this is essentially something similar for research scientists. So they can produce their images, they can have everything in sort of this one workbench that can, scrape, for example, PubMed, connect to the necessary tools, retrieve the info that you're most likely interested in, mostly, covering genomics, protein folding. But importantly, it's not like a new model. So yeah, the magic isn't like a smarter model, it's the workbench around it. And, normally scientists, juggles like a bunch of different tools, be it like PubMed, notebooks, some sort of cluster running in the cloud that has a high performance computing. So you can run, these GPU heavy jobs for AI. And so now this kind of makes it quite easy and nice for research scientists. And it also has like a stack of databases that I assume they will continuously, expand. Right now, I think there's like 60 of them. And yeah, the appealing part is, you can kind of keep a track record of how everything happened in the chat. So yeah, they have a bunch of different features that I guess they're also gonna continuously improve, legation, auto review, so on, also connecting to your, compute. So yeah, here's the section about their managing compute on demand. So, whether it's your own cluster or you can create like a modal account for compute on demand. So helping you scale analysis. So this is also quite nice and handy. You have the code, you can create the images, you can reproduce, trace back, how everything was done from, the pictures to even bash commands that you ran, which, isn't something super new, but I guess it's the convenience, right? Like, as mentioned, right? Like we had ChatGPT for a long time, but, tools like Cursor or even like Cloud Code, I believe they peaked like the Christmas of 2025. Suddenly people started noticing how much you can run or let the agents run stuff for you, which was quite nice. But here's the thing, that these same AI models that power things like Claude Science, they can also very confidently be wrong, right? And this is what I will show you, something I stumbled upon just yesterday, like a real life example of what I was trying to do. And it wasn't even that complex at all. So, just always take this with a grain of salt. So I'm not trying to be like an AI hater. I use AI every day in my work and my personal life every day, to be honest. But it's just to be a little bit more cautious, not treat it like this, magic pill. I think this is super nice, like having an AI workbench for scientists. Something that I missed also from the, direct headlines is that it's not just a launch of a new app, but they're actually also targeting now drug discovery. So they're not just selling their shovels anymore, like their cloud models, giving it to the rest of the world, but now they're doing the discovery themselves. So they're actually using their tools and focus more on the rare diseases, so that I presume they don't compete with the pharma companies that they collaborate with. When I was doing my research at MIT, it wasn't in like drug discovery, it was more in healthcare, but still I remember juggling so many tools. And yeah, this makes it really quite convenient. And, you have everything a little bit more centralized. I'm sure people were working on things like this, maybe it's startups or some, other tools. But, now that it's, from the big AI providers, I assume it's going to become more popular. And yeah, here just to reiterate, it's about the reproducibility. When I was submitting papers and peer reviews, an important factor was, how can you reproduce it? And it's a big topic. It's not just simple saying that, oh, I did this and this, but it can go all the way back to provenance, like what data set did you use, where did it come from, how did they even extract the data, even the devices they used might be biased. So it's not like just black or white, like, oh, you give me the code to reproduce it. I believe that's a good starting point, but it's also a bit, superficial, when we're talking about like scientific rigor. But this is also, quite handy having all these tools sort of connected together. And you can see here, I assume, having a reviewer tell you, certain finding, and, the AI acknowledges it and tries to adapt, and even, creating the PDF for you already, that you can just submit for peer review, which, to be honest, me personally, I'm very cautious about these things, which I'll get to in a second, but also let's see what other people said about this. But yeah, here even researchers at Northeastern, I'm not sure if they were affiliated with Anthropic, probably not, I assume, but they're quite excited about it. I presume, a lot of people are. But one thing that I saw down here from one of their scientists, Jared Auclair, was this, that, he's cautiously optimistic about tools like Claude Science, but what worries him is like a general purpose AI that can hallucinate and miss nuance. And, obviously in drug development, this can have like very real consequences. So essentially yesterday, this is like a real life example of what I was trying to do. I was trying to look up, as you can see here in Gemini, I asked, where are the 3 big AI conferences next year in 2027? iClear, ICML, and NeurIPS. And the first thing that it gave me was a link by this Scout's website. Then when I go to it, I was looking, okay, first of all, it's a bit outdated. I totally acknowledge it. So if a venue moved, then of course, it could be out of date, which is totally fair. And from what I see, it was like agents kind of scraping websites and trying to come up with, useful info for someone like me looking at key deadlines in AI and ML conferences. Something that I stumbled upon is, I looked at ICML, Mikai, and so on, and I know that Mikai moved from the UAE to France, but then I stumbled upon iClear and I saw Vienna, Austria, which was super weird because I was there. I went to iClear, and let me tell you, I was not in Vienna. I went to Rio in Brazil. And so I looked at the link that it showed, right? This open review, which is not opening right now. Okay, here we go. And you see it even says Rio de Janeiro. And if you look for like Vienna or even Austria, right? I'm just like, I don't think you can see it because I cropped my screen, but I'm looking for those keywords and I just can't find it. This is just asking for a location of where a conference is happening. I can imagine a lot of people are like, okay, but this is, an agent can make a mistake and maybe you need another agent to check it, right? And so what I did was copy the content of the website, paste it in ChatGPT, just asked, is everything correct here, right? I don't want to spoon feed it exactly, check iClear's venue, because, if you want to be super specific, then, that's sort of the thesis that I always conclude to in the end, is that AI is really good for people who already know what they want. It's kind of like a really good co-pilot or expert for, domain experts or subject matter experts, because they know what they're looking for. They know like common pitfalls or what usually is done wrong, etc. But yeah, anyways, I'm digressing. Here you can see for iClear, there might be other things wrong here, but I was specifically looking at iClear and it said probably correct but incomplete, which made me almost happy because I thought it caught it, but then it was talking about like some official policy that they didn't cite. And so then I thought maybe I should have, asked it specifically about location, but this was kind of the first round. So I said, it's fine, let me be a bit more vague. And you can see for Mika, it actually did show incorrect, and it does say that, okay, the official website lists France, but also not taking the nuance that it was actually moved from the UAE to France, didn't even do that research or come to that conclusion, which I'm sure there are a bunch of websites saying, why it moved because of the conflicts in the Middle East, etc. So anyways, so I wanted to nudge it a bit more. So I said, give me all the correct locations of the venues, please. And it actually did a web search, and you can see the first one, iClear 2026, it says Vienna, Austria, and the Austria Center, Vienna, ACV. And, status confirmed. It even gives you a link to the Austria Center in Vienna. And, going here is just their general website. Nowhere does it talk about iClear or anything. This is sort of the whole gap, right? Like these AI models, they're super powerful. I benefited a lot from them and still continue to use them, but it's always like super cautiously, because even for a location of a venue, this isn't even like a niche conference or something that nobody knows about. Like the whole AI and ML community know about these 3 conferences. They're like the biggest. So yeah, this is why I continue to be super cautious, because even like years after ChatGPT was launched, there have been a lot of improvements. I'm not trying to take away from all the progress that was done. It's, truly amazing, but it still has to be taken with a grain of salt, Yeah, and we can see like now this Scout's website kind of polluted the Gemini search, right? And then I asked an independent provider like ChatGPT, right, OpenAI, to confirm it. And now probably this now is going to feed back into its training data, maybe even say that to someone else, and it's kind of like a slop cycle. And I think this happens because of reinforcement learning, like this Austria link, right? Like the model knows, okay, a link and a sentence looks much more legit than a sentence alone, but it could be fabricated, and this is exactly what happened. And I gave it even 2 chances. It's kind of crazy, I'm just looking for a location of a conference. Meanwhile, if you kind of extrapolate and think of more complex tasks, like with molecules or drugs, this can be very dangerous, I believe, if you don't have experts guiding these tools. So anyways, these were just my 2 cents, and I think it's a great tool. I still do research a bit on the side, and I'm sure it would be super helpful for like different experimentations, this Claude Science tool. But yeah, I think it's a little bit more like a convenience tool rather than, something that's, like a new model specifically for science. This reminds me of like a viral news feed thing that I saw back in the day, which I believe was false. I think the Austrian authorities said it was completely fabricated, but people who were trying to fly to Australia were flying to Austria, and they had a specific desk for them in the airport. Mistakes like this could lead to people flying to the wrong location, or this isn't even like the worst case, right? Like, worst case, it costs you time or money. With like science and drugs and molecules, this isn't, a joke anymore, right? Like real people's lives are on the line. So I guess the big question is like, can this cure disease next year even? Like even, if Anthropic is driving it right now, they're like focusing on rare diseases. As of now, I think there isn't a single drug that's approved by the FDA in the US that's, done by AI or only by AI. So even in the US, where they're a bit more permissive as opposed to Europe, where it's a bit more regulated, even there it hasn't been done. So even years after, the hype and the start of AI, it hasn't been done yet, which isn't to say it's not going to happen, but, it's going a bit slower than everybody expected, especially with the whole AGI just like 2 years ago that we're going to reach there in 2025 or so. But actually, Novartis CEO, he actually, I believe, sits on the Anthropic board. And if you don't know Novartis, it's a Swiss pharma company. And essentially, he breaks down delays in pharma into 3, which is informational, operational, and biology. And he says, that AI is really good at the first 2, like information and operations, which, as we have seen here, you sometimes don't even get the right location, right? For the processes and operations, if you have like really good harnesses and guardrails, you can sort of guide the model into doing what you want, or the agent. But yeah, biology is also sort of one thing that, you can't just ask a cell to grow faster with AI. So that's one thing that he says, that's something AI can't fix right now. But yeah, even on the operational and informational level, I believe it's also not like a solved problem. Just like we've been saying for years now that, okay, coding is a solved problem, because I believe these things help you get to the first 80%, like a, kind of a demo, but then you have to, as soon as you need to make it robust and scalable and take it out of a demo into production, I think this is where the current, LLMs sort of collapse. But yeah, so to summarize, AI isn't like speeding up biology, it's sort of speeding up the paperwork and everything around biology. So, which I think is, super good. Just like in software, you now have tools that can, help you write software faster. You can build whole applications much faster, but you still need to sometimes think of, or not sometimes, actually all the time, of trade-offs, your different options, who's your target audience, and also rely on your experience from, real life customer projects that you have worked on. So yeah, to summarize, Claude Science isn't like a cure machine. It's just a really good lab assistant that you can have as a co-pilot. It can run like a whole genomics experiment, but it might still fail to tell you the location of where you're submitting your paper to, so 2 things can be true at the same time. But honestly, this gap is like sort of the most interesting thing in AI right now. It can do really good and, complex stuff that we wouldn't even expect it to, but it still collapses at like very, I would say, simple tasks. So anyways, enough rambling, and I hope this was somewhat valuable to you. So yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. If you want to see any other concrete videos, then comment down below. I try to reply to every single one, and see you in the next one.